Here's Patrick Johnston of the Province and Post Media, our Tuesday regular. And if you're watching on YouTube or if you see him clipped in his Sekeres and Price t-shirt. Hello, how are you?
Hi,
Nice to
good
see
morning.
you.
I'm well. Yes, good morning. Hi.
We were asking about Elias asking for a trade or demanding a trade because, Patrick, the two star players, or star skaters at the very least, in the Stanley Cup Final are both in their first seasons with their clubs after letting their previous club know, hey, I don't want to be here anymore, or I won't be sticking around here anymore. We know the summer of 2021 when he was out of contract, Elias told Uffe Bodin there in Sweden, reporter, said, look, I want to play for a team that's got a chance to make the playoffs and go far each and every year. Since then, they've missed the playoffs and have had 3 head coaches. What do you think on his patience level with the Vancouver Canucks, particularly as we go into another summer here where he's eligible for an extension?
Well, it's hard to imagine if they don't make the playoffs, him being terribly happy. I mean, the standard is winning, and if you don't make the playoffs, you're not winning. It certainly feels like a make or break season here. The trend can't just be once again, this time it really counts coming down the stretch. It has to mean something. And if they aren't a playoff team next year, I mean, why wouldn't you say, I want to try something different? In the end, you also, and exactly right. You can look at, Jack Eichel's story obviously was that he had completely, the relationship between him and the Sabres had completely fallen apart. I mean, the Sabres weren't winning either. They haven't made the playoffs. They've been a similarly inept organization. So you could see there was the added element of wanting to get a particular neck surgery, and it seems quite clear it was the right choice. And then in Tkachuk's case, I think that was a player looking to use the power, the leverage that was in front of him in a way that I know really does worry guys like Gary Bettman. They do not want this to become a players' league. They look at how things go in the NBA, and that does not make them excited. But that's the trend that clearly we're going here. So Elias Pettersson, without a doubt, will have at least will know that is something he can do. He can look elsewhere and see what's happened and the power.
The Tkachuk one is far more worrying for a Canucks fan as well, but that's an American player.
Because it was a rejection of Canada or a rejection of a Canadian market?
Yes, but...
So you think it was market as much as organization and franchise?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Yeah, I think they were winning enough. They had enough direction that I don't think Matthew Tkachuk had issue with that. He just wanted to go to someplace better in his mind, quote unquote. The good news for Canucks fans is Elias Pettersson can't, ask to be traded to Brno or what's better for him.
I think the other thing to remember about Tkachuk, let's look at that. What happened this season, right? Like that room completely revolted against the coach. It may not have been like overt, but we know that room and that coach were in a terrible spot by the end. And so here was a star player, knowing sort of what the environment is like and seeing his opportunity. That was really, the way his contract, the way free agency is set up, even as a restricted free agent, that is your opportunity. Only players in his position only have a chance like that once or twice in their career to truly pick. And rightly, rightly, smartly so, he looked and said, I may only be a restricted free agent, but I can still push sort of the scenario here. And, the parallels are not, each Tkachuk and Eichel have extra bits to the story, but at the end of the day, if he wants to go play somewhere where it's just a little bit quieter, he doesn't have to see the media every day in the way he does here. Doesn't have to sort of see fans on the street. I don't know. I don't think he has an issue with it. Heck, he was nominated for the King Clancy this year, which means he is interested in community engagement. But yeah, I totally get it. Yeah. In the end, there are markets around that are a lot quieter, just not as much. Well, you get to play hockey, and that's it.
Well, markets that are quieter and teams that have shown they have the recipe, they have the formula a little bit better than this organization. I got news for the commissioner about a players' league. That's coming, sir. Yeah. The labor is the product here. Players and agents know full well that teams need them more than they need those teams when you're at a certain level. Let me ask you, because I suspect he's going to get an extension this summer. I suspect it's going to come with a no-move or a no-trade clause, which is going to sort of allow him to control a destination? Should there be a destination going forward for Elias Pettersson? Are you going to read anything into the term? Like if it's less than a max 8-year deal, is that going to tell you something like some are speculating right now with Austin Matthews in Toronto?
I think certainly the Matthews parallel again. I mean, that's another good one. You look at the way he structured himself, and partly, the longer the term, the more that AAV, right? Like that's the reality. The Canucks cap structure, of course, in their ideal scenario, is going to be centered around Pettersson and Hughes, the way their salary set out. So it's not like the Canucks will be unprepared for having to pay top dollar to their number one center. That said, they are also, looking at how things have played out. And at the end of the day, Pettersson will be what, 20, I've lost track here, 24 when he signs his new deal. Is that right? 25?
Yeah, he's 24 right now. He'll be 25 in
25.
November.
Okay, so 25 when the new deal kicks in. And that's gonna, he'll have 2 years before free agency anyway. So you're gonna be paying through the nose. that's that is the reality of the situation. That's how this, as much as the salary cap was set up to create cost certainty for teams, it also creates a standard for players. We're almost 2 decades into this system now, and it goes without saying that any time a player's contract is structured one way or another, that says everything. So yeah, if he ends up going for 2-3 years or whatever that walks him to free agency, it will tell you something. Just as him saying, I actually don't want to be here at all, and I'm going to be like Matthew Tkachuk would say something.
Who says no? OEL for Jamie Benn.
Dallas?
Yeah, probably.
Where the hell's that coming from? Of course it's Dallas.
Do you want that guy in your lineup next year if you're Dallas? Honestly, it's just another anchor contract in the league. What do you make of how things rolled out there at the end of the Western Conference Final?
Well, I've always been sort of quietly high on Dallas, even if they did lose 3 times the Canucks this past season. There's been a sort of a consistency to their play that has always impressed me. And Tyler Seguin, I think, is one of the sort of great underrated players of this era. Just the way he always gets it done. So to see them in the third round didn't shock me. Now, Vegas. What blew me away was how Vegas completely ran over them.
2 shutouts on Aiden Hill. If you can't score
Omox is Aiden
twice
Hill.
on Aiden Hill,
but as I said also last night, Bruce Cassidy. Bruce Cassidy is one of the great coaches of our era. The guy got it done in Boston, and now has gone to one of the more fascinating teams in the Western Conference, and they're I think it's a fascinating final. As for Ben, this is what happens. Players get old. You sign them to deals, and you kind of have to live with the tail end of the of what's there.
Weirdly, he had a great year though. He had a 78.3 goal year.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. He's still pretty useful.
Well, this year he was useful. He's been terrible the last.
It was a nice bounce back year for victorious Jamie Benn. It was a stupid decision in game 3. Was it game 3? Yes, and it cost him. And he's going to spend the entire summer sucking on the fact that they were 0-4 with him in the lineup.
But he was caved in last night. He only played 12.5 minutes last night. I really do think, and I joked about the trade center, but I don't know how they just run him back next year. That was not a good look.
It's a real there's no doubt. There's a real dilemma for them. And the cap is $9.5 million. I think if you are going to move him, somehow you're going to have to eat half that contract. You're just going to have to be all right, wherever it is, he's NMC, so it's not like it's an easy. You're right. I get you're jokingly. Well, maybe you can for OEL, but why are no?
He's 9.5 with a no move, so I'm not sure he's going anywhere. Even if Jim Light's the longtime executive in Dallas is,
but he might want to get out after all this.
Who knows? We'll see.
Yeah. We'll see.
I mean, absolutely. If you can get him for OEL, I would do that in a heartbeat. But I'm not sure.
I was joking.
I'm not sure that Jim Nill and the Dallas hockey operations.
Another winger in Vancouver. Come on.
Yeah. Well, just let's wrap up on the Cup final. Who do you like? You say you're interested in it. Who do you like to win?
I was thinking a lot about this last night. They're both very. There's a lot of fascinating things about both these teams. I think Vegas's defense overall is better. I think obviously the sort of Sasha Barkov. I can't remember. Someone pointed this out. Like, talk about completely like no buzz on a. Was it Rob Williams? I think it was Rob. Talk about no buzz on a guy that's having a fantastic playoff. Like I was. Wyshynski asked, polls around and says, "Hey, who do you got for your, who's your top 5 candidates for Conn Smythe?" And I'm like, obviously Tkachuk and Bobrovsky jump out, but you got to put Barkov on your list. You got to put Eichel on your list. I think the star power is in Florida. I think the team certainly is in Vegas. Florida, as many people have noticed, that their series win. I mean, they're rested. That's a huge advantage at this point of the year, obviously. As tight a 4-game sweep as you'll ever see, and but they're playing hot. They've gotten hot. They're a good team. As I've said many times, they were better than a 92-point team. So I think it's a fascinating final. I have no idea who to pick. I'm ready to say Vegas, but I don't really have any reason for picking Vegas over Florida at this point, other than just Vegas I think they've gotten better as the playoffs have gotten along, and like I said, I'm a big fan of the coach and the sort of the way Eichel's performing, and just they're getting it done. It's just there's a lot happening. They do stuff really well, and they've done that since they got into the league, basically.
Yep. No, you're quite right. Cassidy's fantastic, and full credit once again to the Vegas management, coaches, and players for authoring a terrific season. Back on the Canucks. Silovs.
Yeah.
How much, if anything, did he help his standing for the backup goalie job here with that otherworldly performance at the World Championships?
Well, I mean, it's just another piece in their assessment cap saying this really is going to be one of our guys going forward. We've been doing this sort of series under the microscope, looking at basically the roster and seeing where the players are at, and mostly it's been Kuz, mostly been on the forwards, but I'm going to do a Silovs one today about him, and just looking at exactly that, like what has this meant for him in the short term. And I still think it's, basically he's going to be back in Abbotsford and ready to go, if Spencer Martin falters as the backup, and ready to swap him out somewhere during the season. I also think, he becomes an interesting, one of the questions we ask in our little assessment is this player a trade chip? And, there's a lot of things that have to sort of shift, but, assuming Thatcher Demko carries on the way he is, the odds to me are that you stick with Demko because he's a known quantity, and you flip Silovs, assuming he carries on this strong trajectory. I mean, he's not. He had a very good season. He did not have I am the leading goalie prospect in the American Hockey League season. I think if he takes a whole other step forward in the AHL next year, and the way he played at the World suggests he could do that, I think the conversation starts to shift a little bit, because if he becomes that kind of guy, is he now the heir apparent? Do you end up, do you have to make a decision in goal? I think you may have to. He's positioning himself to force that discussion, which would be a good thing. The Canucks, that also comes back on, where does Tolopilo, the Belarusian kid that they've signed, who's going to be the backup in Abbotsford next year, what is his progress looking like? Is there something there? Do they have a plan? What's plan B? What's plan C in goal? But certainly he has set himself up very well to be an NHL goalie, whether it's here or somewhere else. It's going to be interesting to watch.
Ethan Bear, have you heard anything more about the injury?
I have not. I have not really made any inquiries. I enjoyed my days off. I left that to Rick.
Okay. Let me ask,
well, I had 2 days. I had 2 days off, is what I'm saying.
Let me just run this. Let me run this by you. I mean, one of the reasons that guys don't typically go to the Worlds when they're out of contract is because if you get hurt, it makes things a little bit more difficult. He's a restricted free agent. He has ARB rights. The Canucks are over the cap, or right at the cap window. Every dollar is going to count there. Could there be a silver lining here for a team-friendly deal? And do you believe there's a world, any world, where the Canucks might just move on from Ethan Bear because of the cost and how cap tight they are, and what they saw from Noah Juulsen and sort of journeyman cheaper players at the end of last year?
They're different players. I mean, Juulsen, Juulsen was certainly competent. Did fine in his late season cameo here. Bear's a better skater, which takes you a long way. The thing that stood out for me with Bear is the ways that his game evolved this season. And I talked to Rick Tocchet a little bit about this, sort of about in general what he was looking for in defensemen at one point. But you look at Bear came in, and we knew right away that he was really good at getting puck retrievals, coming back, collecting the puck, making a smart decision under pressure. And I talked to him early on about that, and he had said always his instinct was, let's get the puck and then I'm going to find my guy. And whereas when he was younger, when he was in junior, he was a guy that he was looked to be offensive talent, but he knew in the NHL that was not something he had to be. He just had to essentially reduce errors, be smart with the puck when he had it, and play a simple game. But there would be moments as you watched him play where he would, whether it was come back, pick up, retrieve the puck under pressure or what have you, but he would find himself in his own end with essentially a lane opening up in front of him. And certainly in the first couple months, he wouldn't take the space and attack the space with the puck, move the game up the ice, which, if you listen to Rick Tocchet, is what Rick Tocchet wants. He wants his guys, if you have a chance to rush the puck, rush the puck. He wants to push the play up the ice. Let's not sort of dither with the puck. And it started actually happening. Like, Bear started doing that. He started actually picking the puck up and skating it and moving it out. Now, obviously, that's why perhaps we started seeing some turnovers and that kind of thing. But that's the way that Tocchet, I think, wanted to play. So, from that standpoint, there was, I think, evolution to how he plays in a way that certainly I think the Canucks would have been hoping to see. And as for the contract, he was pretty positive at the end of the season about it getting done, and having said that, I just didn't want to talk. Once we got going, I just said, I don't want to talk about it. I just want to play. I don't want to think about it. He seemed pretty confident it was going to get done. I think he wants to be here. And the Canucks, obviously, as has been noted, hyped him up. Jimmy Rutherford's end of season letter, he was one of the guys listed and was, asked about that and called it flattering. So, I don't think there's any reason to think he won't be here. Again, right, guy who plays on the right.
Even with a number that begins with 3?
Yeah, Blake's wondering if he could, if it's a $3+ million, whether the Canucks would even.
Well, I don't. That. Yeah, I don't. That's the thing. If there's a 3 involved, then you start wondering. Yeah, absolutely, I agree. Because that's the reality. But they're also in a spot right now where they still haven't really. They're going to have to change something up. Again, you go, okay, here's a reason why that trade with the Blackhawks that we discussed last week might make sense. On and on and on. So, already talked about it on Rinkwide, I guess. But yeah.
Yep. Well, we appreciate you joining Rinkwide and Sekeres and Price, and wearing the T-shirt. Thank you for this. Have a fantastic week. Look forward to your Silovs ditty today, and we'll catch up next Tuesday.
All right, fellas.
Thank you, Patrick.